Well, research money is tight for all of us, and we're increasingly being asked to continue to create high impact research for high ranked journals with low budgets. And I think this challenge can be overcome, but we do need to do a little bit more strategic thinking sometimes about how we approach that. And so, look, I've come up with 3 approaches that I use to try to create good quality research, and I'm certainly not claiming that I do that, but I do think these strategies will work for you regardless of how much your research funding budget is. And I'm focusing on 3 assumptions or misconceptions that I believe are holding us back a little bit. One of them has been something that I've only relatively recently been forced to look at, which is looking at the issue of public databases or open databases. I had a particular research problem which I couldn't solve without going into the field at a considerable expense in order to create the kind of volume of data that I needed to answer a particularly complicated research question. But I found the data that I needed in a public database. I'll just take you through some of the examples to give you an idea of how, regardless of your research question, you may well find yourself in luck. Data.gov, the US site, it's got a huge range, tens of thousands of publicly available databases in a variety of different formats. And as you can see, regardless of what your field of interest, there is a lot out there that you can access, and you can do a search using the search function. The British government has created something fairly similar. There's also, again, a huge range of data out there that's open source, and this is where I actually solved one of my research problems at this very site. You can go to data and you can click on data and you can do a similar level of search there. And the European Union has also come to the party. You can actually, with the European Union, simply browse through the subjects and kind of get some inspiration. But the key issue here, and again, you can search the data sets. The key issue here is that you kind of need to approach research slightly differently. In my case, I had a fixed research question and I went into a database. It wasn't perfect, but I was able to work out how to use existing questions with existing responses from thousands and thousands of responses, beautiful quality panel data set to fit my research question. Similarly, you can approach it slightly differently. Look at the questions that I've got and create research questions, or retrofit or reverse engineer research questions onto existing data. If you can do this, you can access, rolled gold A-star standard data, and that does give you that solid foundation on which you can build very good public publications. It's simply, at least the data is collected, it's simply then a matter of time of analysing and writing up. All right. The second assumption is that commercial grants are not worth getting. Now, of course, in this environment that we're in here in Australia, but also the UK and the US and beyond, we're very strongly encouraged to get all fight over a very small pie of peer-reviewed, non-commercial, national grants. And the problem is that they tend to go to winners, and the more you win, the more you win. And for those of us who are starting out in life, it's incredibly difficult to get into the winners circle. Now, one way to break that problem is to go for commercial grants. They're a lot easier to get. My field, for example, is shift work and work stress. That has commercial implications. And it's a matter of seeking out those commercial implications, which does involve sometimes cold calling or cold emailing. But once you've got that relationship, that commercial relationship, and sometimes it comes to you, of course, in my case that's happened, where they approach me, I then ask them if it's possible for me to, add a few research questions to a commercial project, or if that's not even necessary, is it okay for me to publish out of that commercial project? There are very few things that have real world interest don't have publishing interest or publishing potential, you do need to get the permission of the funder, and it's important not to prostitute yourself to commercial interests. So you are an academic, you're an expert, and you have an ethical obligation, of course, to do the right thing by the general public, the university that you work for. But there are synergies between commercial projects and genuine research projects of the type that you dream of doing when you're at home with a sherry, that are greater than what you probably believe, let's put it that way. And finally, there's this misconception about students, that they're a pain, that they're a drain and a strain upon our resources, and they are not necessarily so. Now, the classic one is the PhD student. We receive many, as academics, particularly when we're PhD qualified, we get lots of applications from students wishing to do a PhD from overseas and sometimes from within Australia. And there's this general assumption that they take far more effort than they're worth, these PhD students. But you've got to remember that a PhD is a large project that involves a student going out and gathering a lot of data, and you don't have to do that hard work. The PhD student does that. Students are also increasingly being encouraged, if not required, to produce publications, at least one, but preferably 2 or 3 over the period of their thesis. And when they graduate, they become allies, natural allies. If you've done a good job of supervision, as they progress through a career, they become allies of the supervisor, protégés of the supervisor. I think this means that PhD students really, in real terms, are far more valuable to you than you are to them. And that's something that you do have to realise. Embrace good quality PhD students. And work hard for them. Because imagine, yes, you put maybe 5 hours a week into a PhD student. Seems like a lot. 5 times 48. We're talking, 250 hours a year you put into it, 750 hours over a period of a PhD. But you will almost certainly, if you've done a good job, reap 4, 5, 6 publications out of that process, either during the thesis or after the thesis is completed. When you look at it that way, then suddenly you realize it's not a cost. That's actually quite cheap publication potential for you. Remember that the students you have as undergraduates at master's level are all potential good quality PhD students, which is what we're all crying out for. You work with those students in class or online on a daily, weekly basis over a semester. You get to know them in a non-obtrusive sort of way, and you can see the potential in them. Some of those students will be interested, maybe not in having an academic career, but some of those students will certainly be interested in doing some research in that area, because that's the kind of mind they have. That's the kind of mind you're looking out for. So keep an eye out for good quality PhD potential within your cohort of students. And finally, students, even if they're not interested in becoming PhD students, are a wonderful potential resource for those of you who are doing case study qualitative research. There's nothing better than finding a mature age student who is working in a high level position within a company, who shows real enthusiasm for whatever the subject that you're teaching. And you can then drop a hint, say, look, I'm looking for a case study in which to study X, Y, and Z. Would you and your company be potentially interested? And you include them on your publication as a co-author. They learn some more from that process. They're excited because they're very engaged with the university, and you get a beautiful soft entry into a good quality case study with the cooperation of an insider. So, these tactics are tactics that you can use to, increase your research impact without having to go begging for an increasingly dwindling pool of federal Commonwealth money. Thanks very much.